Let's talk about your superpower. Let's talk about autism.
Sure.
And how has that been a strength in developing your career path?
I think the most important part of me happening to have such a thing is the fact that I even chose this in the first place. This is not a normal thing that people do. This is not what most people grow up wanting to be. It's sure like when I went to school in the North Carolina education system, none of the graduating class of my graduating class of like 400 people had any desire to be anywhere near the racing industry. And that's kind of underselling just how kind of solo that journey was. But it was all about kind of finding that location, finding your place. And it really got sold home senior year of college because Temple Grandin spoke at U of A. And while she was there, she went over all the different kinds of minds, which she made a whole book about. I can't remember it perfectly, but basically she said that there are three different types of thinking minds, and the world unfairly focuses on one. And by harnessing it and being able to focus on the three kinds of minds, you can get all these different kinds of workers. She also talked about how unfair sometimes being forced to learn a lot of math is when it's not necessary for certain skills, and it really alienates people who have the potential to be really good at specific niches. All of this to say is that when I asked her a certain question and I had mentioned wanting to be a race caller, she really kind of nailed the point home of find your thing, find your niche. For her, it was agriculture and cows. That's what worked for her and her alone. Race calling worked for me and me alone. Having the ability to be so specific, I think is tied to happening to have such a thing as autism. That I ever wanted to be so interested in something like this.
I love that answer, Nathan. And I love that you've actually interacted with Temple and actually had a chance to ask her a question and interact. And it goes to show, I think, that when people, no matter what it is, whether it's you're on the spectrum or whether you are disabled or whether you, whatever it is, whatever challenge you've had in life, when you share it, it becomes easier for other people then to share their stories and to learn from you and to then go on and do great things without this hampered feeling of, oh, I have been diagnosed with XYZ, or I have this disability, or I have this. It's really just a way of figuring out how to navigate something that maybe wasn't built necessarily for you, but should have been in the first place, right?
Yeah, like that was the big thing in my world, is that like, if you could believe it, despite my profession and the thing that you literally have me on here for, I was later to talk than most toddlers. It took me longer to say my first words than the average toddler. And definitely the biggest one was I was falling behind in education. When I was very young. So all my educational life, there was a bit of game of catch up that was going on. So kind of finding those things that make you want to keep moving forward. Like I mentioned before, I didn't want to go to college. I just wanted to be done with high school because I did not like school. I don't think a lot of people did. But as I kept finding the desire, something like RTIP, working towards that goal and then actually hitting it, I actually started to like school. And then you realize that, maybe you didn't hate school, you just didn't find what you wanted to actually learn. And some people never learn that, and that's the saddest part, that they don't find that thing that makes them want to chase.
What advice would you give to parents of kids on the spectrum whose interests seem too specific or unconventional? Like there's no way they could make a living, or there's no way they could earn money from doing this passion that they have. Not even necessarily passion, but just this finite focus.
I think the big thing is just to listen. Everyone kind of has their own thing, and I think kind of, depending on what that thing is, I think there are a lot of ways that you can make money that people just don't even realize. I mean, who would have thought that, like, this apartment is paid for by yelling at horses all day? And an example, even though none of my family ever worked in horse racing a bit, despite the fact that horse racing is usually started by having a family member in it, as another thing. But I think the biggest thing is listening. The greatest thing that you can do as a parent is just to listen. You don't have to understand everything that your kid is interested in, because yeah, some of it only makes sense to them. My parents sure as hell don't know everything about racing just because I tell them about it. A lot of it still doesn't necessarily make sense to them. But I think the idea of just listening and feeling like someone actually likes that you like something is one of the most is one of those things that will keep you going for a long time and make you feel a lot less alone. And in terms of, like, I guess, finding that career, I think the biggest thing is to just be creative, and kind of balance those things out. If someone is truly interested in something that doesn't really have any kind of financial potential, like just being a movie watcher, or something, some specific hobby, I think then your focus should be creating a life where they can balance out their personal interests with ways to help fund those personal interests, in a way that's kind of suitable. But I think just finding that balance and realizing that your kid is an individual. So what worked for the one person may not work for the other. Even my life does not work for everyone else. It only works because I chose it.